Bienvenidos a este podcast en vivo.
All right, here we go. Peace to the world. We're back at it again with another short little podcast. We're going to continue this conversation of unemployment in the United States. But what's different from the last video is we're going to look at this from state to state and from ethnicity to ethnicity or demographic to demographic, however you want to suit it. But it's this one I think you'll enjoy if you're interested in, unemployment, I think this is important because what I'm about to show you is basically going to show you how things are going and how the employment sector is running state by state. So you as an individual might give you a bit of an indicator as of to where, maybe you should carry your future. Now, I'm not telling you to move and pack up all your things depending on this data, but it's definitely going to help you put things into consideration, right? So we're going to keep it short. I know a lot of you are on lunch break, might have a 15-minute break. So I'm going to keep this short. All right. So with that said, let's get moving. All right. So I've been working with, not working with, but I've been paying attention to the Economic Policy Institute for a good while now. They do great work in terms of, employment, obviously economic policy, right? So they really pay attention to what the financial numbers are looking like, and not just financial, but really what's the trends that are going on within the country in regards to employment, right? So I've been following this for a while. So here we are, right? Economic indicators, state unemployment by race and ethnicity. Okay, so this was just recently updated, right? Just recently updated May 2022. So this is in regards to the quarter 2022 quarter one and 2021 quarter four. So really, we're talking about basically from December on down to even March. So that's where we're talking about here, right? So very recent numbers. This is by Kylie K. Moore. So just some of the key numbers that we're seeing, right? You have DC, highest black-white unemployment ratio, 7.2 to 1. What that's basically saying is that for every one black person that is getting employed or receiving a job in DC, there are 7 white candidates, right, or prospects being hired. So it's 7.2 to 1. So as you can see, our nation's capital is really not, in my opinion, not playing a fair ball game, right? So what else do we have? We have Georgia, lowest Hispanic white unemployment ratio, 0.8 to 1, which basically means that it's just about equal, right? That's equity. That's the number that you want to see. Is this right here? If you can see my mouse. So and overall, the US nationwide black-white unemployment ratio 2.2 to 1. So basically meaning for every one black person that's hired, you have 2 white persons being hired. So not necessarily equity, right? Especially given the fact that the white population in America is just around 5 times greater than the black population. So we kind of discussed that in the last video. You can go ahead and check out the last video either on YouTube, Lyfe Podcast, or type in the Lyfe Network on YouTube, the Lyfe Network. But if you go to Apple Radio, you could just type in Lyfe Podcast. That's with the Y. So let's keep going. I'm not going to read all this. Like I said, I want to keep this short. You can pause the video now if you choose to read this. So it's definitely up to you, right? State unemployment rates by race, ethnicity, and overall in the 2021 quarter one. So basically, we're talking about January, February, March, right? So very recent data. Now, what you have at the bottom here is basically the percentages. So in retrospect, the darker the square of the state, right, the higher the unemployment. The lighter, the lower the unemployment, which is basically good. And then sometimes you'll even get situations where you'll have like a gray, which basically means data was not compiled, or not enough data was compiled to go ahead and present the information. So right now, you see these blocks right here, right? These are the different races and ethnicities. So we're going to check them out one by one, but of course, we're going to stick to what I know best, and that's Black unemployment, right? So just want to give you a comparison. This is what it all looks like, right? So, in different states, you can see unemployment is better in some places than not. California is obviously not doing so well. Mexico not doing so well. Alaska doesn't look like it's doing so well. DC is certainly not doing well at all. So if you saw up here at the top right here, I switched to the whites, right? All whites, not too much of a change, right? Right? Why is there not too much of a change? Well, because the white demographic in America is the majority. So when you click all, like I did now, this represents, well, majority of what's going on, right? So whites. So specifically, right, we can't go through all these states. That takes up too much time. Now, I'm a California guy. So what I want to do is pay attention a lot to California and what's going on in that state. And most of my audience right now is from California. So we'll stick to that. As you can see, right, when you hit California, you see that the unemployment rate for whites is 4.5, right? And then you get to see some of these other ones. I'll highlight them up top so we can see it more clearly. So this is what happens when we hit the black, right? As I said, the gray, we don't have enough data, or maybe just not enough Black people live in these states. But as you can see, California, right, it seems to have gotten lighter, which you would think would indicate something that's good. So in California, as you can see, the unemployment rate is 7.9%, which is basically almost double of that of whites. Now, here's the interesting part about California that I want people to understand is California's Black population is it's around, it's been maybe a year or so since I've looked, but it's been around 8, maybe 9% at the most. It's really not any more than 9%, not that I can know of, unless it's skyrocketed. But given the pandemic and the consequences of that, I don't see that percentage having to gone up in the last 2 years. So I'm going to say 8%. Now, meanwhile, the white population is approximately 30 to 35%. So as you can see, you have a quadruple the percentage, or the quadruple the population of whites in comparison to Blacks, meaning that there's a lot more whites in California than Blacks. So as I was saying previously in the last video, why is it so difficult to employ Blacks when there's so far few in California? And this is a trend in California in terms of a lot of different things, whether it's incarceration rates, whether it's education rates, attainment rates, and so forth and so forth. Even with the small population of Blacks, it seems that a high percentage of them are not thriving at the same rate, right, as their counterparts. So that's something that I definitely wanted to point out. Now, just very quickly, I wanted to pay attention to Washington, D.C., just so you can see just how terrible this situation is going on. Now, the Black population, I don't know exactly what that percentage is, but I do know it's a great percentage of Washington, D.C., far more than the percentage of California. So, when you look at this number and you see 12.5%, which is one of the worst in the country, right? This basically means about 1 in 9 Blacks are unemployed. That's insane. And you compare it to whites, right? Let's go back up here and click on the whites. It's 1.7%. Listen, I don't know what may describe discrimination or racism, but these numbers don't describe it, then I probably can't help you any further. But this is what the 7.2 to 1 ratio comes from that we reviewed earlier up top, remember? So, in previous research, I've actually seen, even at the graduate level, right? If this wasn't the Economic Policy Institute, I'm not sure, but I saw some data where even at the master's level, the unemployment rate for white graduate students was about 2%. And then their counterparts, Black graduate students, right? People that have obtained their master's degree was 6%. So that's something that I've come across. And if you know anything about statistics, you would understand that that is a large gap. 6% in comparison to 2%, that's three times the amount in terms of, Washington, D.C. population. Basically means tens of thousands of blacks are being unemployed at a greater rate. So it does mean a lot. And this is the graduate level that we're talking. This is masters. So you would think that there'd be even more equity the higher you go up in educational attainment level, but that's not the case. So let's get back to what we're talking about. So we can go around the whole country, right, and see different things. I mean, 12.2% in Illinois, that is significantly terrible, right? So that's why you see South Side of Chicago the way it is, and why you see so much destruction going on there, because the youth cannot obtain jobs, or maybe don't want to obtain jobs. I'm sure it's one of the two, but sure it's the previous and not the latter. When you look at the Hispanics, right, in California, here we have 5.9%, right? So definitely an above average percentage, right? Still facing some discrimination in that category, just least or not as bad as others, right? So that's the case. Feel free to go back and pause the video at any time, or just simply type this in: Economic Policy Institute, state unemployment rate by race and ethnicity. Simple, right? So there you have it. I didn't want this to be too long, as I said. I really don't know, what the issue is in terms of why you see these Black unemployment rates, even state by state, being higher than, their counterparts. I mean, I say I don't know, but I'm being very humbled. It's that is what you call racism at its finest: systematic racism. The word's being diluted these days. It's being, pushed into all categories of sentences and syntax, and people are just yelling out this word racism. But racism it's diabolical. It's systematic. It's constructed. And so that right there, the numbers that I showed you, is how that's constructed, right? You have such a small population in California, right, of Black people, but yet still have the highest unemployment rate. So honestly, shout out to any of the employers that are taking a chance to hire, Blacks and African Americans in California. And just we appreciate the opportunities, because we can do the work, and it's just about giving us an opportunity. And it's not about, judging people from the outside. But I'm not going to give you that whole rundown, right? I think we all know better. It's just a matter of if you want to do better. But the last thing I want to express is the reason why you don't see change in this issue that we have of unemployment is simply because the majority population and other ethnicities don't want this to change. When they see that they have a greater chance of being hired, right? The same way the Black person has to eat and provide for their family, it's the same way the white person has to eat and provide for their family. So whether they want to admit it or not, and most will not, subliminally, white people have no issue with these numbers. And I can't say 100%, but majority. They don't have an issue with these numbers when they see these numbers, because they know that they have a greater chance of getting the job. And that way they can provide for themselves, provide for their families. We get it, right? We totally get it. So it's I'm not gonna say it's understandable, but I understand the mentality of why they have not pushed harder into wanting equity within the workforce. Now, like I said, this is a subliminal thing. You're not going to hear white people say that, they don't want Blacks to be hired, or, any kind of thing like that. They're just not going to be fully outspoken about the issue at hand. So, it's competition at the end of the day. I'm not sure how we're going to fix it, but nonetheless, I always say Black people definitely got to stick together and see how we can develop a workforce and businesses and corporations for ourselves, which is far easier said than done given the circumstances of, outside interferences and sometimes internal interferences as well. So, with that said, I'll leave you with that for something to think about. Peace to you, peace to the world.